Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Meet the Candidates Night, a forum sponsored by the YWCA Piqua Public Policy Committee. I'm Nancy McMacken, and I will be this evening's moderator. Tonight's forum is being presented before an audience at the YWCA in Piqua and is being broadcast on WPTW radio. The program is also being recorded by Piqua Indian Nation Television for later broadcast on Piqua Channel 5. Some housekeeping. On your seats, you will find a yellow measurement tool, which we ask you to fill out and turn in as you leave the room this evening. This information is needed for our United Way funding, and we thank you for your help in completing this. We will begin this evening with State Issue 1, presented for your information only. Cheryl Neuenschwander and Pat Williams of the YWCA Public Policy Committee will present pros and cons without accepting questions. Complete ballot language and additional information on each of the issues is available on the League of Women Voters website, as well as the Ohio Secretary of State's website. Our forum tonight will include a representative for one local issue on the ballot, the Forest Hill Cemetery levy renewal with an increase, as well as candidates for House of Representatives 8th District, State Representative 80th District, and State Senator 5th District. We will now hear the presentations regarding Issue 1.
Issue 1, also known as the amendment to reduce penalties for crimes of obtaining, possessing, and using illegal drugs, would add a new Article 12 to Article 15 of the Ohio Constitution. The amendment is designed to reduce the number of people in state prisons for low-level, non-violent drug possession, drug use offenses, or for non-criminal probation violations. In addition, it would provide sentence credits for participation in rehabilitative programs and is intended to direct the savings achieved by such reductions in incarceration to substance abuse treatment programs, crime victim programs, probation programs, graduated response programs, and rehabilitation programs. The amendment would reclassify drug offenses from felony to misdemeanor for both accused and convicted drug users. The amendment expects savings would result from a reduction of the number of prison inmates. It would require the states to spend those savings on drug treatment and rehabilitation programs.
The pros for the passage of State Issue 1 include: it would make the possession, obtainment, and use of drugs no more than a misdemeanor. 2, it would create a sentence reduction credits program for inmates participation in rehabilitative work or educational programs. 3, it would reduce the number of people in state prisons for low-level crimes. 4, it would save tens of millions of dollars annually in prison spending and direct the savings to addiction treatment and victims of crime. The cons against State Issue 1. 1, the amendment would make it more difficult to prosecute drug traffickers. 2, this belongs in the Ohio Revised Code. The Constitution should contain fundamental principles and organization of government. Appropriation directives should not be added to the Constitution. 3, this takes away valuable resources from the court for rehabilitating people and doesn't give judges the ability to use incarceration when it's necessary. And 4, this proposed constitutional amendment does not provide adequate funding for treatment infrastructure nor treatment itself.
The rules for tonight's forum are as follows. The issue representative and all candidates will each be given 2 minutes for opening remarks. Following these initial presentations, written questions from the audience will be presented, and the issue representative and candidates will each be given 1.5 minutes to respond to the question. The order in which candidates respond will be rotated. The written questions must be of a general nature and must be directed to a particular issue or office, as opposed to a particular candidate. Forms for the questions are provided. Committee members will collect your handwritten questions. Please realize that due to time constraints, not all questions may be presented. At the conclusion of the question response period, each issue representative and candidate will be given 1 minute to offer closing comments. These closing remarks will be offered in reverse order of their initial presentation. In the interest of fairness, time limits will be strictly enforced. Our timekeeper, Kathy Alexander, will hold up a sign when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining. A bell will sound as time expires. In an effort to conduct tonight's forum in a timely manner, I will announce the order in which the issue representative and candidates will be speaking. We ask each speaker to move to the microphone as the speaker before you draws to a close. Identify yourself at the microphone each time and begin speaking. Any campaign materials provided by tonight's speakers or others will be available on the table in the outside hallway. As a reminder, I ask those of you who have written questions, please hold them up now for the members of the Public Policy Committee to collect. We also ask that you hold your applause for the candidates and issue representative until the conclusion of tonight's forum. Jim Roth, representing the Forest Hill Cemetery levy renewal with an increase, will speak first.
Good evening. My name is Jim Roth. I am the superintendent of Forest Hill Union Cemetery here in the city of Piqua. Real quick, I'll go right why we're asking for a renewal for our levy and a slight increase in that levy is our cemetery, which is a publicly held, taxpayer supported cemetery, is governed by the Ohio Revised Code. Ohio Revised Code does not permit us to borrow money in any way, shape, or form. Whenever we do an activity out there, we have to pay that bill by check at the time of the job is finished. We're in desperate need a little bit right now to increase the number of burial spaces available for folks to come in. We're kind of getting to the point where we're very limited in that availability. So we need to add another section. But in order to add a section, obviously we have to have a way to pay for that. The state does allow us through the Ohio Revised Code to borrow money only if a certain amount of money in a millage is earmarked for that development. And therefore we're asking for that 0.2 mil to help us fund that project as well as some other projects that we'd like to do to provide to the community and the surrounding areas. What that is currently we have a 0.5 mil operating levy that is for the general upkeep and taking care of the cemetery itself. That mill generates at a $100,000 rate of $15 per year per 100,000. The increase will increase it by $7 per 100,000. So therefore we're asking basically for a $22 a year from a $100,000 valuation property. So we hopefully will have your support and appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Moving to representative to Congress from the 8th District, Warren Davidson and then Vanessa Enoch.
Thank you so much. It is really an honor to be able to speak to you tonight, and it is an incredible honor to represent our district in Congress. So just over 2 years ago, I won a special election and then won a general election in the fall of 2016. And that was the first time anyone from Miami County had represented this district since Bill McCulloch from Piqua. And you recognize the geography if you're from Piqua, but a lot of you probably know the history as well. He was vital to the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of the 60s, and a great representative for our district. When I won, some of his family members gave me that book, and it was really a book of his history, and it was really interesting to work through. It is an interesting time in American politics, and it is an honor to be there and represent it. The issues that we campaigned on, we talked about growing the economy, and the results have been tremendous, more than most anyone believed was possible. The new normal was 1.5% growth. The reality is we're growing more than 3%, as promised. I campaigned on national security, and the administration has made a priority to defeat ISIS. That's something I'm excited about. We still haven't voted on an authorization of military force. Congress, of course, is supposed to declare our wars, and while there is a time for war and there's a time for peace, there's a time to kill, there's also a time to vote, and that's long since passed. So I'm going to continue to fight for that. I look forward to your questions tonight, and I appreciate you coming out on a night like tonight when there's other activities nearby to have an informed vote. So thanks again. God bless y'all.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Vanessa Enoch, and I am a mother, business owner, and a concerned citizen. And I am also a resident of Westchester, Ohio. I've lived in Westchester for about 16 years, so as such, a 8th District citizen for that amount of time. I actually attained a bachelor's degree from The Ohio State University, a master's degree in business administration, and then a PhD in public policy and social change, all from right here in good old state of Ohio. I have 2 daughters, Christian, who is 18 years old, and Michaela, who is 24. Michaela lives in Washington, D.C. And I actually put Michaela through school as a single mom after my husband passed away in 2009. And as a business owner and a single mom, I understand what it's like for many of you who have struggled to make ends meet and who have been challenged by some of the legislation that has come down from this administration. I ran for office because I was tired of Washington bureaucrats making policies for people in this district, but not considering the impact that that policy would have on the rest of us. And so I actually saw an article that said men decide the fate of women's health care. There were no women in that room, and I became very concerned about that because I believe that as women make up 63% of poverty in this district, that it was time for a woman to step forward to actually represent all of us in this district. So I'm hoping to have your vote on November 6th. And so again, my name is Dr. Vanessa Enoch. Thank you.
Next will be the candidates for the state representative of the 80th District, DJ Burns and Jenna Powell.
What's going on, everybody? My name is DJ Burns, candidate for state representative. I'm a 31-year-old Piqua resident, senior editor at 11warriors.com. I serve on the Piqua Parks Board and as the secretary of the Miami County Democratic Party. I joined this race in July because as an avid follower of state politics, I can no longer stay on the sidelines while privileged politicians continue to reward their corporate cronies at the expense of working people. You deserve honest representation that understands everyday problems, and tonight I would like to offer you that choice. For the last 3 months, I've knocked on 5,000 doors, from Tip City to New Madison. I've spoken to county commissioners, mayors, Chamber of Commerce directors, teachers, mental health professionals, and more. And I'm proud to report we're not nearly as divided as those in Washington, D.C. would have us believe. But the truth is, our state government sold out rural Ohio. It's led to wealth inequality, unseen since the Gilded Age, underfunded schools and infrastructure, stagnated wages, skyrocketing healthcare costs, and the opioid epidemic that still ravages our workforce to this day. This election is about choices. While we can continue down the path that led us here, tonight I would like to offer you a bolder vision for your future. I'm here to show you that a better world is possible, and I'm ready to fight for it. Thank you.
My name is Jenna Powell, and I'm the Republican candidate right here for the 80th District, which is all of Miami County and southern Darke County. I was born and raised on a farm right here in the district where my father and my grandfather have farmed the ground for generations. Ever since I can remember, I wanted to be a business owner. And when I was 17 years old, I started my first business. I graduated from Liberty University with a degree in business, and I now co-own and manage the fastest growing outdoor billboard company in the Midwest. We work in over 25 counties. We own over 450 billboards, and I work with hundreds of small businesses across the state. I care about this community because of the churches, businesses, and families that make our area great. I'm running for state representative because I'm tired of what's happening in government. If elected, I'll fight for life from conception to natural death. I'll protect the Second Amendment, and I'll work tirelessly to cut taxes and reduce regulations. I look forward to your vote and your support on November 6th. Thank you.
Speaking next will be the candidates for State Senator, 5th District, Paul Bradley and Stephen Huffman.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Bradley. I'm the Democrat running for Ohio's 5th State Senate District, which covers all of Miami County. I know that you all have been inundated with advertisements and phone calls and mailers and every yard signs and all that stuff. And I know it's only 12 days more, I promise. But I think when you see all that excitement and energy about this race and about this election this year, I do have to commend the people here putting on these events to help people get informed, but also all the people here standing up, learning more about these races and getting involved. I think it's an amazing thing when more people are involved in our democracy. I think we're stronger as a country. And you know, this is I think the last candidates night that we've been invited to in this race. And I still remember the very first one in West Milton. It was around the primary time actually, and we were asked, do you think as a country we're more divided or less divided? And I stood up there, and I still believe this to this day, that we are more united than ever as a country, because people are disgusted and disturbed with the things that they see on the television and the political infighting and negative attitudes that we see so often with that DC Beltway mentality. And I think people are more united than ever. They want a government that are going to get things done. You know, I am a Democrat who happens to be the son of 2 Republican parents, and they still don't know what happened to me. But you know, at the end of the day, the things that the core beliefs that we carry, whether as a Republican or a Democrat, are very similar in the sense of, you know, let's have good schools for our kids, let's have good jobs with good wages for everybody, and let's make sure we keep our neighborhoods safe. Let's do the things that make government an effective part of our community. And I think when we focus on those issues, it matters less if you have an R or D next to your name. It matters, you know, what you're going to get done for your community. That's what I'm really looking forward to. That's why I'm running this time, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Hello, I am State Representative Steve Huffman. I've represented Miami and Southern Darke County in the 80th District for the last 4 years. Before that, I was your county coroner here in Miami County. I've lived all my life in Miami County. I'm very proud of that. I grew up in West Milton. I live in Tip City. I lived there with my wife and 5 children, 4 of them in college. Yes, four kids in college. We had 4 kids in less than 3 years. So, you know, we talk about education. I believe the education is where we need to start, especially, you know, at a young age to give kids the advantage to go along in life. So I'm very proud of what we have done in Columbus over the last 4 years. I'm not a divisive person. I believe that I've worked with people. I will continue to work with people concerning the opioid epidemic, education. I'm a practicing physician. I am the only MD ever elected to the General Assembly in the state of Ohio. I still practice medicine. It gives me a perspective of the opioid epidemic. The guy that is giving the Narcan, that, you know, when I was county coroner, I was in houses pulling heroin needles out of people's arms and talking to their families on how desperate the opioid epidemic. I'm proud of what we have done in Columbus. You know, there's still an epidemic. There's still many things for us to do in Columbus. There's, you know, we got $180 million in the last budget, new money. So I look forward to continuing to talk to you tonight, and I just want to recognize all the students that are just happy to be here to get their credit in their government class. So I remember those days, but I do think it's great to be able to listen to everybody and start the process to be an educated voter. Thank you.
Written questions from the audience will be presented directed to the candidates and to the issue representative at this time. Our first question is for candidates for state representative. It will be answered first by Jenna Powell and then by DJ Burns. What actions would you advocate to protect local schools?
As Representative Huffman said, welcome to all the students, because this is really exciting that you guys are here and part of this. When it comes to education in our district, it's really important, because that is the next generation of people that are going to achieve the American dream right here in the district. I believe that instead of taking so much power and money on a state level, what we need to do is we need to empower individuals, empower parents, and empower the school districts to make the best decisions. So that is definitely what I'd be doing as a state representative. Thank you.
DJ Burns, candidate for state representative. I'm the only one in this race that's a product of a public school. I'm proud of public schools, and I believe in it's one of the most sacred bonds that government has with its community. What I'd be advocating is an end to the charter movement that's going on, and this talk of school choice, which is nothing more than just opening up our child's education for profiteering to billionaires. When you want to talk about empowering school districts, I mean, they need money, they need resources. Our state government has robbed the local government funding to balloon the rainy day fund. And when you just look at it, it's like the crumbling teacher salaries. I mean, we have teachers spending hundreds of dollars on their own money out of their own pocket, and it's on simple, just everyday supplies. And our teachers, they shouldn't need to reach into their own pocket to have things that for kids that they need to succeed. And I really think that the gambling on these for-profit charter schools has led to $1 billion out of our public school system, and as a result, our education system tumbled from 5th in the country to 23rd. And it's not acceptable to me. We need to do better, and when I get to Columbus, we will do better, because we've unconstitutionally funded our schools for 2 decades. And I'm done with the talk. It's time to get serious about our commitments to kids and the community.
This question is for the candidates for state senate. It will be answered by Stephen Huffman first and then Paul Bradley. Many feel the system favors the rich. What changes to campaign finance law could improve this situation?
Well, thank you. I'm not sure how campaign finance laws and the rich go together, but maybe I can use my time to clarify some other things. So, in the past, there's been talk about dark money and receiving money from big corporations. So I need to clarify that. I've never taken a dime from corporations. Mr. Burns likes to tell everybody, oh, the Republicans are taking money from the corporations. It's never happened. It's illegal. I did take money from political actions committees just like he does. He takes, Mr. Bradley, or the Democrats will take money from political action committees, mostly unions. And it's no difference from me when a group of nurses get together, High Nurses Association get together, and they give money to their organization, and they donate it to myself or Ms. Powell. And so there's no different than that from a union. So I just want to clarify that. I'm not sure how campaign finance, it's all transparent. Tomorrow I will file my required finance. Like I have in the past, you can see everybody that's donated to me and how much I've spent and who I've spent it on. So thank you.
Paul Bradley, Democratic candidate for Ohio's 5th Senate District. It's taped up here to identify ourselves before speaking, so I apologize to people in the crowd if that seems weird. But I think this is an important question. I think any time that we can look at how we can make our campaigns in our elections more transparent, we strengthen our democracy. Whether we're talking about corporate donations or dark money, or just how much money we spend on these campaigns, it's insane. It's insane how much we spend on these campaigns, and I mean that's why every commercial you're seeing is for Sherrod Brown or for Richard Cordray or for DeWine or whoever. It's because they have millions of dollars being poured into these races, And we have seen, you know, if you would have looked at this state senate race even 10 years ago, we would be spending maybe a quarter of what we're spending right now, and just to be competitive. And that's, you know, I think if we can get some of this money out of races, you know, and I'll say this, you know, people, you know, corporations are and their PACs are only putting money into these races because they believe they're going to get something out of it. And you know, when you take that as a general truth, I think you can understand why there are a lot of people who feel like their money, their $15. You know, our average contribution over the past week has been $15.18. You know, you can feel why somebody might feel like, you know, their $20 that they're giving us is being washed out by a $12,700 max contribution that a PAC might be giving them.
Our next question is regarding the Forest Hill Cemetery renewal with increase. Do these improvements include the large mausoleum on top of the hill?
Well, unfortunately for the mausoleum that's up on the hill, if anybody's been out there to see it, it is a large mausoleum. It does hold over 200 full-size burials right now. It has room for maybe 200-300 more if we configure it right. The only problem is we do not own it. The cemetery itself doesn't own it. The city of Piqua actually owns that. It was awarded to the city by a judge in a lawsuit that the owner of the property didn't have any money left, so the state law requires that a tax-based organization will take over a cemetery or a mausoleum that is basically defunct. So the city has that. They are repairing it. They are fixing it. They do work on it every year. Eventually it will be back in operation again. We're very confident of that. But in the meantime, we do not own it, so we don't pay any money toward it. Thank you.
Our next question for the candidates for Congress. It will be answered first by Vanessa Enoch and then by Warren Davidson. What is your reaction to the recent sending of explosive devices to various political officials and the media? And do you think that the current climate of negative political rhetoric makes these actions seem more acceptable?
Thank you. I'm glad you actually asked that question. It's been a very frightening day to be in politics. In fact, when my daughter came home from school today, I asked her to check the mail, and then I thought about it, and I said, okay, if you see a package when you open the box, don't touch the mail. That's just how frightening this environment is. You don't know who's going to become a target. And I've had my tires slashed in the midst of this campaign. People can be vicious. And I think that if we remember that there are human individuals on the other side of those vicious attacks, that we would hope that people would make more responsible decisions. I think that in this particular political environment, that what probably should come to the fore for all of us is that we are humans. We all want a better life for ourselves, for our families. And the only way to do that is to reach across the aisles, to put partisan politics aside, and to have conversations, to talk, and to ensure that the policy decisions that come out of, you know, our seats would be those that would benefit the people of the district, no matter what their political persuasion is. Thank you.
Hi, Congressman Warren Davidson. And thanks for the question. You know, those who've used their voices to call for a rejection of civility, I think have inspired some of these acts. I think they've pushed people to engage, to move past rhetoric to action. And I reject those voices. I condemn these acts of violence, and I'm prayerfully asking everyone to return to the civil discourse that built our country. Our First Amendment's about speech, it's about assembly, peaceful assembly, and that's got us this far. That's made us one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. And I think we need to embrace that. We do have differences, and there is a good way to resolve them at the ballot box. And I think it's been really hard for a lot of people to accept outcomes in elections. It's been hard for people to accept some of the rhetoric out there. And that's gone too far in a number of cases. And I can say firsthand, talking to Steve Scalise, who was shot on a baseball field because he was a Republican member of Congress. You know, those actions were inspired, you know, for political motives. And it really resonated with members of the House because nearly every single one of us has had a death threat, a personalized death threat. And I can tell you that I never had that as an Army member of the Armed Services. Thanks.
We will ask our next question be answered by the candidates for state representative and those for state senate. We will go in the order of DJ Burns, Jenna Powell, Paul Bradley, Steve Huffman. What is your opinion about health care and Medicaid expansion? Do you intend to vote to keep or repeal it?
DJ Burns, candidate for state representative. My opinion of Medicaid expansion is that it was Governor Kasich's crowning achievement, and it is something that he will be proud of. And I think it's a shame that a lot of members of his own party are actively trying to take away something that 800,000 of our residents rely upon. 60% of those are working and have jobs. And this talk of, you know, it's bankrupting the state, it's only because, you know, they've slashed budgets to reward their corporate cronies, which is why my current state representative is so mad at me talking about it. And you know, and most of this funding comes from the federal government. And more people having health care is good. And I'm tired of politicians who have never known a day of struggle in their life actively working harder to strip health care from people who actually have to work for a living. It's shameful, it's immoral, and the fact that we allow private profiteers into our system in the first place speaks to the decadence of our health system. And I think we can do a lot better as the greatest country and the greatest state in the union. Thank you.
Jenna Powell. My opponent can say what he wants, but those just are not the facts if you look at the facts of the state of Ohio. Medicaid expansion was very bad for our state and will continue being so if we go in the same pattern. If we continue looking to government to solve all of our problems, we can look around the world in different countries and see where that's gotten them. It's gotten them nowhere good. We are the way we are in America because we believe in personal responsibility and fighting for what we believe in. What we can see and what we need to do is get healthcare back to the private market so that we as individuals have a choice of what we want to do. Thank you.
Paul Bradley, candidate for State Senate. I will absolutely support protecting Medicaid expansion if elected. DJ is right on the facts. 800,000 Ohioans have received health care through this expansion effort. And at the end of the day, these are people who weren't being served through other means. And I'm a firm believer that we're strongest as a country when we have a strong middle class. And part of that is how we look at the health of our workforce. And this, you know, again, you know, when we have families that are one injury away from bankruptcy, that's not good for our communities. It's not good for Piqua. It's not good for Dayton. It's not good for any part of Ohio. And so I think when we can create a stronger, healthier workforce, we're growing a stronger, healthier, more productive Ohio. Thank you.
Yeah. State Representative Steve Huffman, running for the Senate District, 5th Senate District. And I agree, you know, Medicaid expansion came with, around the General Assembly with Governor Kasich. And I agree with Mr. Bradley. It's about workforce. You know, we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the United States in a long time, one of the lowest black unemployment rates for many, many years. And that's how we get people off Medicaid expansion, is get them out there working on jobs. I've worked in a one-payer system. I've been to Australia and practiced medicine there, and also in Bermuda. And those places have universal health care. And it's not universal health care. It's a two-tiered system. I remember an Aboriginal man came in. He had a heart attack, and I was out on the edge of the outback, and I gave him the medication to save his life. And the next day, I called the referral center and said, "Hey, look, this guy had a heart attack. Let's get him up there and get a heart cath." And he says, "Well, does he have government insurance or private insurance? If he has government insurance, I'll see him in 6 weeks in my office. If he has private insurance, I'll see him tomorrow in my office." And I think we're going to develop a two-tier system with Medicaid expansion. And we need to remember, these are people, not the disabled, not pregnant women, not children. These are able-bodied Americans that can go out and get a job. So, you know, we have a lot of work to do on Medicaid. So, thank you.
Our next question is for the candidates for representative to Congress. We'll hear first from Warren Davidson and then Vanessa Enoch. What area would you most want to work across the aisle in offering a bipartisan solution to a political problem?
I think the most urgent problem to solve for our country is our debt and deficit crisis. I'm encouraged because it seems to have suddenly become bipartisan. Historically, Democrats have favored lots of spending, and I've really enjoyed the enthusiasm for balanced budgets that I've heard from my Democratic colleagues in the past year and a half. So I hope that means that we're really able to take a serious look at prioritizing our spending. Personally, I feel that we don't have a problem where we're not generating enough revenue. The reality is we are generating a lot of revenue, but we have a spending problem. We overspend. And we're really having a hard time prioritizing spending for infrastructure. We always put it off. We always put it off. And if you look down, whoever's been across the Ohio River Bridge on 75, that bridge is old, it's tight, and it needs to be replaced. It doesn't just need to be refurbished. And a lot of times, those are the kinds of things that there really are federal priorities. You have multiple interstate highways going through there, and you put it off. And instead, you fund other causes. What you have to do is sit down at the table and prioritize the spending. And scarcity is a challenge for everyone, and it needs to become a challenge for the federal government when it comes to picking priorities. We can't spend more than we have every single year.
You know, it would be very difficult to determine which issues should be dealt with in a bipartisan manner. I think that when we begin to talk about things in terms of partisan politics, that, you know, we forget that everybody has to live with these decisions. One thing I think that has been on my mind as we are sitting here at the YWCA is women's issues, for example. The Violence Against Women's Act is the most effective piece of legislation that protects women who are victims of domestic violence. It protects women who have experienced dating violence and sexual assault. And I would like to see, you know, those kinds of things. I would like to see us work together across the aisle to solve these problems. The YWCA, for example, receives $27 million from the Violence Against Women Act. And this particular legislation has now been tabled and put on hold, and neither side has made a decision about funding for women's issues. You know, I think we get left off the agenda when it comes to making decisions, and, you know, there are individuals who want to make decisions that are favorable to business, and then there are individuals on the other side who have no power to do anything. So that's the kind of thing that I think about when we talk about bipartisan politics.
We have another question regarding the Forest Hill Cemetery. It's actually a two-part question. What will you use the increase for?
Well,
And
okay, I'm sorry.
And what will happen?
Don't start the time yet.
And what will happen if the levy fails?
Well, those are good questions. The .2 mil levy that we're seeking to increase will be used for two basic things right away that we're looking at. One is the expansion of the cemetery, which we've talked about, that we're running out of options for people to look at. So we need to increase that availability for people can have more than one or two options to look at. The second thing is we currently operate all of our equipment, vehicle storages, things of that nature, in a number of buildings that have 7 garage doors. So we're operating below the ground, above the ground, off of this way, over this way. And then again, it's all across State Route 66. So every day we're driving small equipment, lawnmowers, etc., across State Route 66. Luckily, we've not had any problems with any accidents, but we want to look at building a storage maintenance facility up on top of the cemetery itself. That is an option that's still down the road yet, but our first priority would be to look at this section that we need to grow by. If it doesn't pass, everything stays the same. We're going to still operate the same. We're just not going to be able to expand anything. Thank you.
This question is for the candidates for state representative. It will be answered first by Jenna Powell and then by DJ Burns. Which is the greater threat to our system of voting? Gerrymandering or voter suppression? Explain your choice.
I think one of the beautiful things about living in the United States of America is that every single person has a voice. At debates like these, many times people look at me and say, oh, we're so excited that a woman is running. That's an exciting thing. But I've said since day one, I didn't run because I'm a woman. I didn't run because I'm young. I ran because I have a voice, and I have a voice that wants to be heard in our community. And so when it comes to voting, everyone has the opportunity to vote in our district. And that is an amazing thing. There's a lot of organizations that are doing the hard work of getting out the message so that individuals have the opportunity to vote, to have their voice heard. And I'm excited to be part of that on November 6th.
DJ Burns, candidate for state representative. I'm not sure what I just heard, but to me, voter suppression and gerrymandering go hand in hand. I mean, and this is why the Republicans participate so hard in it. I mean, you look at Warren Davidson's district. His district is the most gerrymandered district in the state. 30% of his voters are Republicans. This district right here, a lot of people told me I was crazy to get into this race because of how gerrymandered it is. And I understand why they do it, but it's unfair, and it disenfranchises the vote when it comes to voter suppression. These are they usually target minorities, transient people, poor people, people that traditionally vote Democrat. It's not a coincidence, and it's why they fight it's why these organizations fight so hard and suppress our vote. We could have things like automatic voter registration when you turn 18. I believe that our democracy is stronger when everybody participates, and I want to make it easier. But the other side believes that their leverage goes down with the more people vote. So you get things like, extremely gerrymandered districts, and then you get and then it turns all the action into the primaries, where you have somebody who can get 7,000 votes, register 88 complaints on election day, and still, possibly become your next representative in a district of 100,000 people. Now, to me, that's wrong. When politicians choose their voters, bad things happen. And we've seen the results in Columbus. Thank you.
Next question is presented to the candidates for state senate. Steve Huffman answer first, then Paul Bradley. What is your position on the rainy day fund? What should be done with it?
Thank you. State Representative Steve Huffman, your candidate for the 5th Senate District. Rainy Day Fund, when we started under Democrat Governor Strickland, it was at 89 cents when it was handed over to Governor Kasich. Over the last nearly 8 years, we've raised it to about $2.7 billion. And that was by being conservative with our budget. And I think that we're at a point that would last about 40 days. And I don't know how your household works, but to only have enough money for 40 days is, but I can take that. I think what we need to do with the future excess, I don't think we need to spend it. I think the future excess, we need to start giving back to schools and to the local government funds to continue to put money back in them that we have taken out before, to get back to where we were. So thank you.
Paul Bradley, candidate for State Senate. We do have $2.7 billion in the rainy day fund in Ohio, and how we got to that point is by stripping that money and those dollars from our local communities. We have seen the state balance their budget by stripping money away from our local communities, and to me that's not being fiscally conservative. That's passing the buck, and that's why I think we see so many levies having to be passed in so many of our local communities, and frankly, we're seeing a shift of that tax burden, not a reduction. And I think, right now in Ohio, whether we're talking about the opioid health crisis or we're talking about our public schools still being underfunded, it's raining in a lot of our communities right now. And it's time for us as a state to be a better partner, an equal partner in helping our communities get back on their feet in so many different ways instead of balancing our budget on their backs. And I think that's what we need to be doing.
Our next question is for the candidates for Congress. How, and we will start with Vanessa Enoch and then Warren Davidson. How would you best counter the anonymity of dark money giving influence to election outcomes through Citizens United?
I think we should be able to attach who's given money to which candidate and the votes that these candidates are actually making when they take office, because this money is actually, Congressman Davidson said that money is speech, and he's absolutely right. My concern is, what do those corporate dollars say when they go into the pot, and these individuals who are now beholden to these corporate interests, how are their votes connected with that speech from the money that they've received? I think that that's the best way to counter what we actually see in terms of dark money. Thank you.
Hi, Congressman Warren Davidson, and thanks for the question. I will say one of the pleasant surprises that I've had since taking office or even campaigning is the way that money works. I will say, before I ran, I was pretty cynical about money. I still am in some ways. There's some things that you scratch your head on, even still with an inside view, and I get why people have so many concerns about it. The good news is as nefarious as it could be, it isn't as bad as I think most people perceive it. I think it really works most of the time more like missions work does. People don't give money to a missionary because they want to persuade someone who's an atheist to pretend to be a Christian, to pretend to care about the people in a given country, and to pretend to go share the gospel with them to make them convert to Christianity. And in general, what I've seen in politics overwhelmingly is people say, I like what this person stands for, and they give money. Sometimes they give $5, sometimes they give $500. And the great thing is, when you talk about candidates, it's all transparent already. There are interest groups that run ads, but they're not spent by candidates. Outside groups do spend money to influence elections, but the candidate and the candidate campaign, all that stuff is already transparent. And so I think that's a good thing. That we have that kind of transparency, and you can find out more for the federal offices at fec.gov.
Right. Our next question will be addressed to all of our candidates this evening. We will go in the order of Paul Bradley, Stephen Huffman, DJ Burns, Jenna Powell, Warren Davidson, Vanessa Enoch. The YWCA has as its motto the elimination of racism and the empowering of women. On a personal basis, how can you demonstrate an adherence to these principles?
on the empowering women part, I usually probably would just defer to my wife, but who's in the back, always hiding in the back for me. But I think these are very important issues that the YWCA has championed for a long time, and whether we're talking about racism or empowering women, we need to look at how we can make a government that treats everybody equally. And for too long, that has not been the case. Whether we talk about voter suppression, whether we talk about gerrymandering, whether we talk about access to health care, I think we need to make sure that we have elected officials who not only say the right things, but do the right things when it comes to making sure that we are fighting for women's rights and for minority rights, and to make sure that we have a government, again, that is effective in treating people equally. Thank you.
Hey, State Representative Steve Huffman, running for the 5th Senate District. I agree. We need to empower all races, all parts of our society, the rich, the poor, the men and the women, and treat them all equal. And I think that's what I've done in Columbus for the last 4 years, is look at how it's going to affect the inner city. This 5th District is very diverse. Miami, Southern Dark, Preble County, the city of Dayton, Trotwood, Harrison Township. And so, in Columbus, I've tried to look at bills from every other perspective, how it's going to affect race, women, and I voted that way. And I think I'm well known in Columbus for my being open-minded towards all aspects of society.
DJ Burns, candidate, state representative. As far as racism, I think it's one of the most vile things that a human being can be, and I've tried to live my life. I'm very thankful to learn that from my mother, who's in attendance tonight. Her mother before that was a member of the NAACP, and I continue those lessons to this day. I mean, my campaign manager is a person of color, my financial director is a person of color, and my head field organizer is a person of color. And as for empowering women, they don't need a guy like me to do that. I think it's kind of sad in a race with dynamics like this that I have to be the one defending women's reproductive rights, but I wear that with a badge of honor because I trust women to make their own healthcare decisions, and I trust them with their own body, and I don't think the government has any place inside of a woman's body. So those are just very simple, easy questions to me, and I continue to represent those every day that I live. Thank you.
Jenna Powell, Republican candidate for state representative. I think it's absolutely ludicrous to think that with 50% of the abortions that happen to women, that we can stand here today and say that we're for women when we abort over 50% of them that are aborted are women. As your next state representative, I will do everything I can to fight for life, and I believe it begins at conception and it ends at natural death. As a community, how we create a stronger community is we lower taxes, we reduce regulations, and we get state and federal government out of our way as a community as much as possible so that on the local level, we can fight for what we believe in. And as your next representative, I will do that.
Thank you, Congressman Warren Davidson. I think, life experience is incredibly important. And we just talked a lot about compromise. And I think, you look at the beauty of our country. Unique in its history, we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? You look at all men are created equally. The beauty of that vision was tainted, and still is in some ways, by a compromise. And the 3/5 compromise is an important reminder that not all compromise is progress. We still are struggling with that. I think it's important that we treat people equally, and I think our country has come a long way. The insult of racist is used frequently today because racism has probably never been less tolerated in the United States of America. We have a long ways to go, But why does that sting so much? Because it's not tolerated, and it shouldn't be. As for women, I think we've come a long way as a country since women's suffrage. We've come a long way since World War II for women. But I agree with Jenna Powell that we shouldn't come so far as to pretend that the adult human is somehow more important than the baby human. And we should always protect life.
We're good.
Dr. Vanessa Enoch again. I've been fighting for marginalized communities my entire life. I think the most important thing in ensuring that there's fairness for everybody is to make sure that everybody's at the table. We need to make sure that women and minorities have the opportunity to participate in our government to ensure that our government is fair to everyone. I don't agree with Jenna that women's voices, that women have an equal opportunity to have a voice in this government. Numerous bills for women were not passed. And even with the decision that I discussed earlier, where men decide the fate of women's health care, there were no women in that room, and as a result of that, they decided not to cover women's maternity care. That's a problem, and it's a concern, and had there been women at the table, there would have been women there to advocate for women's issues. Our congressman said the other day that the Violence Against Women's Act isn't a priority. That's what happens when you don't have women's voices at the table. Women's issues, children's issues, all of those things fall by the wayside. They're not a priority, this current government. So there does need to be more women at the table. 55% of Congress is made up of men, and we don't have representation. Thank you.
This question is for our candidates for state representative and state senate. We will ask the questions to Jenna Powell, then DJ Burns, Stephen Huffman, and Paul Bradley. Do you support State Issue 1? Why or why not?
Jenna Powell, Republican candidate for state representative. I oppose Issue 1, as do many people and organizations in our community. As a community, we already have a raging opioid epidemic, and Issue 1 will not help that, and it will really harm our community as a whole.
DJ Burns, Democratic candidate for state representative. I already voted. I voted yes on Issue 1. It's time this state moves in a new direction when it comes to drug treatment. We're the most incarcerated state. We spend the most money on prisons per capita in the country, and it's wrong and it's immoral. And the other opponent, the opposition, likes to float scare tactics like 19 grams of fentanyl and a drug dealer's going home with a ticket. He's going to prison for drug trafficking. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And really, the scare tactics of the other side just completely turned me off to any argument, because, I mean, if you look at it, I understand that the courts and prosecutors and stuff like that are going to lose money on this, but that's fine. I think that money should go towards other things like community safety, job training, stuff like that. And if it were really as bad as they try to pretend it would be, I don't think the Fraternal Order of Police would be endorsing everybody from Mike from Cordray to Steve Dettelbach for Attorney General, both of whom support Issue 1 despite the FOP opposing it. Thank you.
Hey, State Representative Steve Huffman, running for the 5th Senate District. I am going to vote no for Issue 1, and I'll give you some other reasons that I'm good friends with Sheriff Plummer in Montgomery County. Had breakfast with him the other day, and he says, hey, look, I got 39 people in this jail that are waiting for rehab. If Issue 1 passes, I'd put them on the street back again to go do drugs with no intervention, no prevention in any way. He goes, what do I do with these 39 people? They're going to go do drugs. My younger brother Sam is a judge here in Miami County. My older sister's a judge in Montgomery County, and they deal with this stuff every day. My sister helped develop the drug courts in Montgomery County. Just about every drug court in the state of Ohio would go away. And those are the special courts to go to in lieu of conviction, in lieu of going to jail, to give those judges an opportunity to look at someone that was caught with a low-level amount of drug and say, hey, look, I care about you. I want to give you, 30 days, 30 days in rehab. They don't want to send them in jail. But this amendment would. It shouldn't be in the Constitution. And you look at the Budget Department. This will not save us money. According to the State Budget Office, it will increase the cost because we have to pay for certain things and certain things in rehab. And so it's not a saver. It is also brought by George Soros and Zuckerberg and the dark money that is financing. It is not by people from Ohio.
Paul Bradley, candidate for State Senate. I will be voting yes on State Issue 1. And, we have been trying to incarcerate our way out of a drug problem for decades now, and I think most people would agree that it hasn't been working. I think if State Issue 1 does pass, those people in the jail, they won't just be put out on the street. We'll have money and resources to help them with substance abuse and recovery treatment, and I think that's a good thing. Do I wish that this had been handled by the state legislators? Absolutely, I do wish that it had been handled and that this issue was not being posed to voters right now, but that's where we're at because of inactivity in Columbus. And so this idea that this is being pushed by outside money, yeah, there might be some people who are funding it, but ultimately this is going to be decided by Ohio voters, and I think at the end of the day, Ohioans know what's best for their communities. Thank you.
Okay, our final question tonight will be for the two candidates for state representative, starting with DJ Burns, followed by Jenna Powell. What qualifies you to run?
The fact that, DJ Burns, candidate for state representative. What qualifies me to run is that I've done a lot of things in my life. I've done all kinds of roles. To people that out there that struggled, I've faced everyday working problems. I know what it's like to look at your bank account and back at your bills and wondering how you're possibly going to make it work. I've been underinsured. I've been underemployed. I've had wages ripped from me because Mike DeWine didn't think that low-wage workers' overtime was worth the money and sweat that we put into it. So I graduated I didn't graduate. I should have graduated college after a cabal of bankers melted the world economy. So I think the problem with the State House is that we elect so many business owners and lawyers and all these things, and we lose touch of, back when this country used to be great, we had politicians that came from the working class, that understood the working class, and most importantly, understood everyday problems. And that way we're not cutting services for billionaires and big businesses, and then going back and saying, oh, by the way, to working people, we have to cut out, your health care, your roads, and your schools. So with me, my philosophy is always going to bat for the little guy against the big guy. And my 31 years of my life, it wasn't a straight path to this podium. I've lived mistakes, and I'm the only candidate up here that's honest about their credentials, their life, and where they've been, and most importantly, where they live.
Jenna Powell, a Republican candidate for state representative. So I was born and raised on a farm in southern Darke County. My parents are sitting in the front row and are joining us tonight, and it was so kind of them to come. Growing up on a farm, ever since I was very little, we did farm markets 6 days a week as kids so we could pay our way through college. When I was about 13 years old, my dad knew that I always wanted to be a business owner. So he looked at me and he said, we have this opportunity. How about through the local school you start college business classes? So when I was 13 years old, I started college business classes. When I was 17 years old, I went on my first sales call for a company I started. I remember I was scared to death, I was sweating, and it was just a really nervous thing. But through a lot of hard work and people and a community that believed in me, I was able to start that company. And I now have a company that works across the state of Ohio with hundreds of small businesses. While doing that and hearing the heart of small business owners, I've heard the struggles that they have through a state government that is no longer for the people. What I want to do as state representative is to get people to understand that lower taxes and less regulations are not just because people can have more money in their pocket. At the end of the day, it's because we believe that when you have less taxes and lower regulations, we're going to have a community that has small businesses that thrive. And when you have small businesses thriving in a community, you have stronger churches, stronger families, and stronger individuals as a whole. Thank you.
In closing comments this evening, the speakers will be addressing you in the order reversed from their opening comments. Each has 1 minute to give their closing comments. We will begin with the candidates, followed by the representative for the local issue on the ballot. Closing statements of State Senator 5th District candidates will be given by Stephen Huffman and Paul Bradley.
Hey, thank you. State Representative Steve Huffman, candidate for the 5th Senate District. I guess this is the time to say why you should vote for me. You know, I first want to my wife of nearly 27 years is here, Catherine. I'm very proud of that. I've lived in the district all my life. I have practiced medicine in the missionaries. I've been a missionary for 1.5 years overseas, treating the underserved and giving my time. I'm not a career politician. I've practiced 25 years of emergency medicine and said I need to do something different for my family, and that's why I got through the Ohio House 4 years ago. I think you can look at my record, but what I do in Columbus, defending the unborn. Look at the unemployment rate, more people back to work, the things that we've done with education in Columbus while I'm there. I think that's something to be proud of, and I hope that the people of Miami County and the 5th Senate District see that. So Steve Huffman for the 5th Senate District. Thank you.
Paul Bradley, candidate for State Senate. First, I got to thank the YWCA for putting on a great event and giving us the opportunity to connect with so many people. Also, I have to say congrats to Piqua for being so engaged on their cemetery. I don't know how many communities would be that engaged, but if that's how engaged you are in that, then Piqua has nothing to worry about. You know, I have not been an elected official before, but I have worked for a great one. I worked for Senator Sherrod Brown for 6.5 years as his regional representative for Southwest Ohio. And I think more than anything what that taught me is that it doesn't matter RD next to your name. It's about getting things done, about serving your community and getting to work. You know, I think whether we're talking about better schools for our kids, better jobs and wages, or safer communities, again, these aren't political issues. These are things where we're trying to move the needle in the right direction. You know, I am very excited about this opportunity to serve this community and do so openly. You know, I commit to holding town halls, community office hours, and local connections as much as possible. Again, my name is Paul Bradley. I'm asking for your vote. Thanks.
State Representative 80th District candidates will begin with Jenna Powell and followed by DJ Burns.
Jenna Powell, Republican candidate for state representative. Growing up on the farm, Sunday meals were a really fun thing because there's 7 kids in my family. We'd all get around the table and we'd have dinner and we'd talk about life. So when I started the campaign, I thought, what is the way that I can kind of do this with the community? So what I offer is having coffee with people in our community. I put it out on our social media and I say, come and join me for a cup of coffee in the community. And what I will talk about is, one, I'll hear from you guys and hear what you guys care about and what you believe in. And secondly, since I've said since day one, what I will do is I'll fight for lower taxes, less regulations, so that as a community we can get better jobs and a stronger community as a whole. My name is Jenna Powell, and I look forward to your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
DJ Burns, candidate for state representative. I just want to say thank you to the city of Piqua. Love you guys. YWCA, thank you. Love you guys too. As I said at the opening bell tonight, you know, the other side offers the same politics and talking points that we've heard for the last 30 years, we've seen the results in real time. So it's who do you believe? More talking points or the reality in front of your face? And to Republicans that are skeptical about me instantly, I get it. I understand. I'd be instantly skeptical of me too if I were you. But just know, with me, you know, it's not going to be, you're not going to get a donkey or an elephant, you're going to get a lion. And I'm going to go to bat for those that disagree with me, and I have no choice as a Democrat in this district to be the most responsive state representative that you all have ever seen. Otherwise, the Republicans are going to get rid of me in the next election. So thank you. I'd appreciate it if you took a chance on me, because we need a new path, because the status quo ain't working. Thank you, DJ Burns for Ohio, djforohio.com.
Vanessa Enoch, followed by Warren Davidson, will give closing remarks for Representative to Congress, 8th District.
Thank you, Dr. Vanessa Enoch again. I meant to say earlier that 20% of Congress is made up of women. That was a slip there. This Congress has passed legislation that overwhelmingly favors the wealthiest 1%. I'm running for the people of this district. This district actually has a median income of about $10,000 less than the rest of the country. I'm sorry, less than the national average. And while some people in this district have done well, the district overall has struggled. We need jobs, infrastructure development, we need healthcare, and we need education. We have to lift everybody out of the circumstances that the district is in. The wealthiest 1% have many representatives in Congress. We need a representative who's going to fight for you and for this particular district, and I want to be that representative. So I hope that you will remember me on November 6th when you go to vote. Again, my name is Dr. Vanessa Enoch. Thank you.
Hi, Congressman Warren Davidson, thanks so much for coming out tonight. Thanks for listening, for those people listening at home on the radio or on the road on the radio. And thank you so much to the YWCA here in Piqua for hosting this event. It's really been an honor to push for an agenda that's got our economy growing at north of 3%, that's got regulatory relief that's not just helping corporations, it's helping corporations grow and invest here today. Big companies like Apple and Facebook had money offshore, not because of political ideology, because our tax code was broken. Companies like Budweiser are owned by foreign companies, and we were at risk of seeing that continue. That trend's been reversed because we got tax reform done. That tax reform helps every family, and if we take that away, it'll take an average family of four's $28,000 over 10 years away from a family of four. We don't need to go that direction. We need to go the direction we're headed, and we need to go that direction faster. We need to do it in a way that's more fiscally responsible, and there's a lot of work left to be done on that front. And so just like I joined the Army to serve our country, I love this country as a soldier's passion, and I look forward to continue to fight for you as our member of Congress. Thank you.
Jim Roth, representing Forest Hill Cemetery, will be increased, will conclude with his closing remarks.
Well, okay, here we go. Here we go. Actually, I look at the room, I want to thank everybody very much for coming out. I realize I don't know how many people here actually can vote for my cemetery, but it's okay. Thanks for being here. You know, but I have the, oh, and by the way, everybody do this once. It's time to go home. Yes. Okay. I have the privilege of running one of the largest publicly held cemeteries around in the state of Ohio, actually. And that it's an historical cemetery, and we want to keep going forward with that. We've got some blessings from the state of Ohio that we are eligible for historical status. So we're working on that. It's going to take a little while to do that. So we're working on a lot of programs to get forward. It's just that, you know, I'm hoping that the 2.2 mil goes, and that for anybody out there listening, the 0.2 mils that we asked for will not be used for any new hirees or any salary increases or anything else, but strictly for cemetery expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to end our forum this evening with a few comments. You may still vote in person early through Monday, November 5th at the Miami County Board of Elections located on the ground floor of the courthouse at 215 West Main Street in Troy. You can check their website or your program this evening for dates and times. A sample ballot is on display in the hallway by the tables with election materials. The polls are open on Election Day, November 6th, from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Remember to take a photo ID to your polling place when you vote and announce your name to the election worker. The YWCA Piqua does not endorse any issue or candidate. And again, please complete the yellow measurement tool and return it in to a committee member before leaving. We'd like to offer our thanks this evening to WPTW Radio for broadcasting tonight's event, to Piqua Indian Nation Television for taping tonight's event for later rebroadcast on Piqua Channel 5, to Steve Baker, who is sharing tonight's event on Facebook Live, and to the Piqua Daily Call and area newspapers for promoting this evening's event. We thank the audience and those listening at home. And especially, our thanks to the candidates and to the issue representative for caring enough to participate in the Meet the Candidates event. Please join me in offering a round of applause to all of them. And we would just ask that you remember to vote. It is your responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you.